We appreciate your time and spending your lunch hour with us as we learn how to talk to parents about vaccines. Thank you to TAPI and Central Arizona Area Health Education Center, also CAHEC, for making this event possible. Let's go to the next slide. And here are some reminders for today. So if you are not speaking, please keep your microphone or your phone on mute. You can use the chat box to ask questions, and we highly encourage you use that. We would love to answer any questions that you may have today. So please use the chat box. We have some TAPI staff, Denise and Jasmine, monitoring the chat, and they're able to get you any information you need or answer any questions that you may have. And we always get this question multiple times throughout the presentation that yes, all handouts, videos, links, and a recording of today's presentation will be available to you on our website after the training today. So don't feel like you need to write everything down or try to capture a link. You will have access to that. Next slide. Okay, so our training today is 10 things parents need to know about why we immunize babies. I'm Laura Smith with TAPI, and I'm a certified health education specialist with a bachelor's degree in public health. And I'm very passionate about preventing disease through vaccines. So I'm so happy to be here. I'm the mom of several children, and I have been there sitting in the doctor's office having questions about vaccines, and I'm really passionate about preventing these diseases that we're going to talk about today. Wendy is my co-presenter today. Wendy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, it's good to be here. My name is Wendy O'Donnell, and I have a background in health education. Immunization has always been a passion of mine. I am also a mom of 3 kids, including one pandemic baby. He just turned 6 months, so it's been an interesting time to have a little one, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So I just want to go over the objectives of the training today. We're going to discuss 10 science-centered, evidence-based concepts. So we really want to make sure that you all have the science to back up what we are talking about today. And so then you can go ahead and share with the parents and the people that you interact with factual information, right? We're going to answer common questions you may have and talk about misconceptions that you may hear and teach you how to distinguish facts from myths. And we want to also provide you with credible vaccine online resources that you can share with parents and colleagues. Today, we have a lot of people joining us with a lot of different job titles: medical assistants, health educators, vaccine specialists, school nurses. I even saw a firefighter doing a vaccine clinic on our registration list. So welcome everyone. We are so happy you're here. And you all are from around the entire state of Arizona. We have all counties represented today, which is always really fun for me to hear. And we want you to feel that you can become knowledgeable about vaccine benefits, and it will help drive parents to make more informed decisions on their intent to vaccinate their children. We will also have some quizzes throughout the presentation and opportunities to win prizes. We love to give away prizes at TAPI. And so please use the chat box to chat in your answers and things like that. Next slide. We're going to watch a quick video about what we have learned about vaccines from the past. And we've used this video even from before the pandemic started. And it's interesting to see how a lot of it is even more relevant now, now that we're living in the time of COVID. So let's go ahead and watch this, and then we'll talk about it right after.
I want to tell you about a time
in American history so that
it never repeats itself.
So it never repeats itself. It was a harrowing time.
A heart-wrenching time. I could hear my mother warn me, "Seal, don't go out and play."
My family was ravaged. Thousands and thousands died.
I was scared.
So scared.
And then one day,
Then one day,
And then one day, there was hope.
Before vaccines, there were few ways to help protect against deadly illnesses. Diseases like measles,
Meningitis.
diphtheria,
Hib,
whooping cough,
or polio, which killed my grandma's youngest son. Without vaccines, these threats can reemerge.
I'm here.
I'm here.
I'm here to tell my children to help protect their children.
Get your kids vaccinated and keep them on schedule.
I never want my grandchildren to see what I saw.
Thank you. I see we're getting a few questions in the chat about receiving credit for attending today. Yes, feel free to put in your name and organization, and we will make sure that we account for you, especially if you're watching with more than one person on the same screen in like your office or something like that. Okay, so back to the video. The real dilemma we have to face is that because of the effectiveness of vaccines over the past 50 to 75 years, people have really forgotten about those diseases and the vaccines that are developed to fight those diseases. So this is a phenomenon called vaccine amnesia or public health amnesia. If we don't see it all the time, then we kind of forget that it exists, like polio or something like that. A public health initiative such as vaccination becomes so successful that people just forget that that was how bad it actually was. And we can see measles cases starting to pop up more and more often across the country, which is definitely not what we want to see. So we're going to start by going through the 10 things that parents need to know, and then we will answer questions and go from there. So next slide, Wendy, go ahead and talk to us about number 1.
Okay. Sorry about that. Is this covered title?
Yeah, it is. I can see your control bar at the top.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to make that go away. It was going away on its own before, so okay, sorry about that. The top says, number 1, kids are at risk for disease. So this is a chart of measles cases, a measles outbreak that we had in 2019. So measles is something that we have a very effective vaccine for, but it is highly transmittable. So it's very, if we don't have a certain level of vaccine coverage, then it's very easy for measles to spread from person to person. So this is just a demonstration that the diseases have not gone away. We currently still have pertussis circling, and this could easily pop back up and cause some problems around the state. Arizona is specifically targeted or identified as a hotspot for measles because those vaccine coverage rates have decreased. Every year, the Department of Health requires schools to submit their immunization data so we know who's covered and who's not. And this is public information, so parents can go online, they can check this information themselves. We were typically at about the 95% coverage rate, which is really good for stopping very contagious diseases like measles. But over the last several years, that number has been decreasing. So the number of the percentage of vaccine coverage has decreased while the number of vaccine exemptions has increased. And that leaves our kids especially vulnerable to diseases like measles. And because of that, Arizona is now considered a hotspot for these vaccine preventable diseases.
Okay, number 2, vaccine preventable diseases still exist. The data shows that diseases still exist and are circulating. However, I could argue that if you've never experienced some of these diseases, you may fall into the trap of believing that they no longer exist or will never touch you personally, right? This video that we're going to watch is really hard to watch because it's a little baby who has pertussis and is struggling to breathe. And this baby is too young to be immunized. And so she caught it from somebody else. And so we're going to talk about how we can prevent this from happening in the future. So let's go ahead and watch the video. And it's about 2 minutes long. So just hang in there. It's hard to listen to.
Okay, it's okay. Okay, take a breath there, honey. Come on. Almost there. There we go. Oh my, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Here. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. That's okay, sweetie.
That video is so hard to watch. I have a 10-month-old baby. Wendy has a 6-month-old baby, and it is just terrible to see that baby struggle to breathe. So hopefully it made an impact on you that this is a vaccine preventable disease. And this is why we all get vaccinated, to protect our most vulnerable around us. Next slide.
So number 3 is outbreaks are preventable when parents make the decision to vaccinate. So as I mentioned before, that 95% vaccine coverage level, when we immunize at 95% of the population against a vaccine preventable disease, we can prevent an outbreak from happening. So we create this layer of protection. So if 95% of the population is vaccinated, the vaccine preventable disease has nobody to go to. So if I am sick, for instance, and everybody around me is vaccinated, it has no way to spread to them to then spread to another person who maybe is not vaccinated or cannot be vaccinated. It really stops the spread of the disease in a community. And we refer to this as herd immunity or community immunity. So we create that protection for babies who are too young to be vaccinated. You know, there's certain ages where you get certain vaccines. We know that now with the COVID vaccine. Luckily now the 5 to 11 age group is able to be vaccinated, but we still want to make sure that we're protecting the younger kids by making sure that everyone who can get vaccinated is vaccinated. It also helps protect not only those too young to get the vaccine, but those who have a compromised immune system, who may not be able to get the vaccine themselves, and who, if they were exposed to disease, could have even more dire consequences than, just getting sick for a little bit. It could have a much bigger effect on them. So in keeping up this herd immunity, this 95% of the population, we're protecting the most vulnerable in our community and making sure that everybody is doing their part to have a healthy community.
Okay. Wendy, if you stop share and then start again, can we see if that black bar will go away?
You know what it is? I believe it's when people chat, because it didn't pop up until there was something in the chat box. So let's try it again. Share screen.
Just because we're missing the title.
Yeah, the titles. I know. Sound. Okay, let's see if it goes away.
I'm still seeing it.
I think I can move it. Oh, yeah. I can move it to the bottom, but that doesn't really get rid of it.
You can move it to the bottom, yeah.
Does that, I mean, is that?
Oh, you know what? It's there's, go on that again. It says
leave.
One more. It says hide floating controls.
Hide
one.
Right there.
See if that works.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. That should go away. And that black bar in the middle should go away in just a second. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So number 4, vaccines work. We want to make sure that you have the hard evidence that vaccines work. Once we have a vaccine against a disease, that means we've been able to eradicate, eliminate, or decrease the number of cases to almost 0% after the vaccine has been introduced. Vaccines are researched, monitored, and followed in the community, tested and updated. We all know this as you've been following the COVID vaccine process, that they are thoroughly researched, monitored, updated. They go through all the different steps to get approved. The vaccines we use today are not the same ones that were originally developed. Once a vaccine is approved for use, it is still tested constantly and researched for safety and efficiency. These diseases go away because vaccines work. So let's look at this chart here. Smallpox was eradicated in 1980, decreased 100%. Polio decreased 100%. You can go through this list and see all of these diseases have decreased from 94% to 100% once a vaccine has been introduced. Next slide. There we go. According to the CDC, vaccines save an estimated 42,000 lives every year in the US alone, which is 3 times more seatbelts and 3 times more than seatbelts and child restraints combined. So I said I have a lot of kids, and when we get in the car, we all buckle up, right? We make sure that the baby is in her car seat correctly with the strap across her chest. And we don't want to get into an accident and cause harm. If you think about that compared to vaccines are 3 times more. They save 3 times more lives each year than seatbelts and child restraints combined. It's just another way to protect your child from something that's preventable, right? It only takes a single exposure to a disease that you can't see for your child to become ill with one of these diseases. And the long-term effects on their health can be very serious if they survive. So we want to make sure our children are protected, and we encourage the parents we're working with to protect their children also. Next slide.
Okay. So number 5, vaccines offer protection to us, sometimes in different ways. Newborns receive some immunity from their mother, but it often wears off when they are still young, which is why a lot of the vaccines start at a certain age. Some people cannot get vaccinated if they're too sick or if they are allergic to some of the ingredients in the vaccine. So vaccinating you and your family helps protect them. Again, it's that community immunity that we're looking for. And, you're protecting your neighbor by vaccinating yourself. Getting shots offers protections that will help your child immune system fight when they are exposed to diseases. So it helps give them a little glimpse of what they could see if they were going to be exposed to the disease itself. And then it creates that immunity so that if it is exposed, your immune system remembers, oh, I've already seen this. I know what to do. I'm not going to get sick. I was very lucky to be pregnant when the vaccine was offered. So I did get the vaccine, and I was very excited to get the vaccine to protect me. And because we know that pregnant women are at higher risk for complications from COVID-19. So that gave me a little bit more peace of mind going out into the community and coming back to my family and going into work and things like that. So I knew that I was doing the best to protect myself, which of course protects my unborn baby. Some of the research that's come out about the immunity that babies are born with when their mother is vaccinated has been really encouraging, and further cemented my feelings of being glad that I was able to get vaccinated. So I'm super glad that I was able to offer my newborn even a little bit of protection because I was vaccinated when I was pregnant. So I think, in Laura's case, it was a little different because her baby was born probably right when the vaccine was created and starting to be introduced into the community. So I probably had a little bit more peace of mind than she did. So the timing worked out for me really, really well.
And now vaccines are widely available to all pregnant people. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit, if it's okay to get to get these vaccines while pregnant. Yeah. And also, we talk about it offers the newborns some protection, but then the way that vaccines have been studied and the way that we know what age to give them, they've been studied to give the immune system the best response. So we start the vaccination series early in a child's life to start them building immunity to some of these diseases right when it's kind of wearing off from the protection that they received from their mom. So all of those, the timing of vaccines has been studied, and that's shown to be the best and to give the best immune response and the best protection in everybody, no matter what age. Okay, vaccine antibodies act as personal ninjas to protect from the actual disease. After someone gets the actual disease, it can take several months or years for their immune system to fully recover, leaving them vulnerable to other illnesses and diseases. So it's better to actually get the vaccine in the first place and prevent that. The vaccine tells your body that it needs to equip itself against this disease before you ever are exposed to it. And then your body in response creates a bunch of antibodies that are like these ninjas, to just waiting to fight off an exposure. Many years ago, when the vaccines were developed, they had a lot more antigens in them to protect against the disease. Now, with advances in science, the vaccines have been refined and updated to reduce the amount of antigens needed to protect against the disease. You can see on the screen here on the left, 30 years ago, there was 3,000 antigens, when today there's 305. So a significant difference. And with less antigens, we're able to protect against more diseases. 14 diseases now compared to 8 in 30 years ago. All of that research on safety and efficiency makes it possible for the vaccine developers to make sure they're getting better and better results all the time. Next slide.
So we have
our quiz. You want to introduce it, Wendy?
Sure. I talked a little bit about this, so I might have given you some hints, but what vaccine is recommended during pregnancy? So A is pertussis, which is the DTaP vaccine, which pertussis is whooping cough, if that's a little bit more familiar to you. B is the flu vaccine. C is COVID. And then D is flu and COVID, or E, all of the above. So
Getting lots of questions, lots of responses. So many people know the answer. Let's see if we get anyone else wanting to chat it in before we tell you. Very happy to see a lot of E answers. E is all of the above. Pertussis, flu, and COVID vaccines are all recommended and safe to take during pregnancy.
And this is a really great reason why, is because babies get their first vaccine from mom. So again, this has all been studied, the timing of it. You know, it's recommended to get the pertussis vaccine at a certain time in pregnancy to give the best immunity to the baby as well. But pertussis, flu, and COVID are all recommended to get for a pregnant woman to get during pregnancy. I talked about my experience. I was able to get that peace of mind with my first two pregnancies. I got the pertussis and the flu vaccine, and then of course with this third one, I was able to get the COVID vaccine as well. And another thing, so all in addition to the pregnant mom getting the vaccine, it's also important that the family is protected. So, you know, I had my husband, of course, get the COVID vaccine as soon as he was able to as well, so that he would help protect me and our baby. And then also the flu shot and pertussis. With my first pregnancy, everybody, grandparents, aunts, uncles, everybody that was going to be seeing my new baby, I made sure got the pertussis vaccine, and she was born in January. So, of course, the flu vaccine as well. So again, it's just really giving you tools to create a healthy environment for that new baby to come into, so that you're not exposing them to something that could be potentially very dangerous. Of course, it's important to talk to your OBGYN to discuss timing, as I mentioned, and any concerns that you have. There's a lot of myths out there about, you know, about the COVID vaccine during pregnancy. Your OBGYN should be your first person to ask about that. They will give you the best information and the best guidance. And the research now has shown that it is safe. There's absolutely no reason to not get the vaccine during any of these vaccines, of course, during pregnancy. Flu, we talk about this every year. Your best defense against the flu is the flu shot. It's flu season again. We're coming into, we just finished Thanksgiving. We're coming into the holidays. You're going to be around, many people are very excited to be around family again, because last year's celebrations might have been a lot different. We want to make sure that everybody is protected. So make sure that you're getting the flu shot before you are going into those types of settings where you're going to be around grandparents or new babies. Again, it's just a way to protect everyone that you're going to be around. So here's another quiz. Can someone get the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine in the same visit? So A is yes, B is no, and C is not sure.
This is a great reminder for everybody, not just pregnant people, but everyone. If 5 and up, can they get a flu vaccine and a COVID vaccine at the same visit? Everybody is saying A, yes, you can, and you're all correct. So thank you so much for your participation. I see A's all the way down. That's awesome. I'm so glad that that message has reached everybody, and you all know that that is okay to get the flu vaccine and COVID vaccine in the same visit. Next slide. Doctors and science support vaccination. So all of the organizations support immunization as a strategy to keep kids healthy. Trust your healthcare provider. That is where you should be going for any medical advice, right? Their education, knowledge, and experience is what you can rely on if you have questions. They are also a great place to send parents if you get stuck on a question that a parent may have about a vaccine that you're not sure. Tell them to talk to their medical provider. Next slide.
And number 9, off to school equals up to date on shots. Vaccines are required when children enter childcare, preschool, or kindergarten to protect them and their classmates. And it's really important for kids to be up to date because they're in close contact, as we know, as COVID has shown us, they're in close contact with their peers, with the other students, the teachers. And when they're that close, disease can spread rapidly. And you don't want your child to get sick, and you don't want them to bring home something to get the family sick. Again, those that are too young to be vaccinated, those who have compromised immune systems. There's been data to show that a lot of kids during the pandemic have fallen behind on their shots, and kids weren't going to their well child visits because of concerns of getting COVID. We were all just kind of hunkered down and trying to do the best we could to avoid being around other people or being potentially exposed to COVID. But now is the time to make sure that your child is up to date. We're doing in-person schooling again, and I think everyone's kind of back and trying to get back to normal, especially now that it's school age kids can get vaccinated all the way down to 5. There's also some confusion between required, so vaccines that are required for school and then the vaccines that are recommended. I think people see the term required and they think that's more important than recommended vaccines. The requirements are set by the state. So they just say, okay, this is what we want kids to have in school to keep kids healthy. So it is not a comprehensive list of all the vaccines that are available and that are recommended for your child. School age kids have a bunch of different recommended vaccines by their providers, and those are the ones that it's very comprehensive, and you can talk to your child's provider about that. But that list is bigger, and it's not decided on by politicians, it's decided on by healthcare professionals. So it's a more expansive list, and it really gives them the best level of protection.
We talk a lot about baby shots, but the same recommendations for vaccines continue throughout your life. We recommend following the CDC schedule for immunizations. These schedules are updated with new and improved vaccines as they come out. They've now been updated with the COVID-19 vaccine recommendations. So you can go to the CDC website and review the recommendations for yourself. They even have a printable vaccine schedule that's easy to read for your reference. On our TAPI website, we also have printable flyers. You can order some flyers that have the vaccine schedule if you would like some to pass out to your patients or parents. That is an option. Next slide. This is a great video that talks about why vaccines work. It's a little bit technical, but it really gives you some great understanding of how the process of making a vaccine and why they work happens. So think about any questions that you may have about vaccines, put them in the chat box. If you have heard from different parents or patients, vaccine questions you're not sure how to answer, put those in the chat box as we watch this video. So it's about 7 minutes. So sit back, relax, and enjoy watching this video.
I worked on it for a whole year. I so enjoyed it.
So sorry about this ad. It should be over.
Sorry. There we go.
Aren't you glad you don't have scurvy? In 1747, in the first medical trial ever performed, Scottish physician James Lind found out that eating citrus fruits could cure scurvy. Now, today we know this works because citrus contains high levels of vitamin C. In fact, ascorbic acid, a common name for vitamin C, comes from the Latin for not scurvy. By issuing rations of lemon juice to sailors, the British Navy was able to pretty much eliminate the disease until the late 1800s, when polar explorers suddenly began to see scurvy again. The copper pots holding their lime juice had destroyed the vitamin C, but they were pretty confused. So despite James Lind's experiments 150 years before, citrus fruits became the enemy. And when Robert Falcon Scott set out to reach the South Pole in 1911, he carried the finest in canned meat products, biscuits, chocolate, tea, and zero vitamin C. A Norwegian team beat them to the pole by 5 weeks, and during their sad journey home, Scott and his team perished in a blizzard, sick and weak from what was probably scurvy. It had been so long since anyone had seen this disease, the British had forgotten how to prevent it. When we create such effective solutions, we can forget how serious the problems were. Thankfully, people today don't die of scurvy or polio. Since the introduction of Jonas Salk's polio vaccine in 1955, the disease has been nearly eradicated from the earth.
The thing to remember is that this is a continuous process.
Compare the 358 infections reported in 2014 to the 1940s, when 500,000 people per year were paralyzed or died from polio infections. Vaccines work. Our immune system is on constant alert against germy baddies, with millions of white blood cells each on the lookout for specific infections. When an immune cell meets its target, it replicates itself, and this clone army sends a barrage of protein weapons called antibodies to label the trash for cleanup. And after the infection is gone, so-called memory cells stick around, ready to mount a fast attack in case this germ shows up again. This is how we develop immunity, and it works pretty well, since we're all still alive. But even with all that, some super bad germs can take us out before our immune sentries have had time to call up their clone army. This is especially true for young children. Their immune systems are fresh out of basic training. Thankfully, we have vaccines, which are made of tiny pieces or weakened versions of viruses or bacteria. They let our immune system see what the bad guys look like and recruit those all-important memory cells before we ever have to actually see the real enemy. Thanks to vaccines, the US was able to eliminate measles in the year 2000. But in recent years, as more and more parents are refusing to vaccinate their children or are vaccinating them later than what doctors recommend, it's back. In most states, more than 90% of children are vaccinated, but that's not enough to keep a disease like measles at bay. In our episode about Ebola, we talked about a number called R0, the basic reproduction number for a disease, or the number of people infected by one person in a susceptible population. For Ebola, that number is low, but for measles, each sick person will infect up to 18 others. Luckily, vaccines can change that. The fraction of people who are vaccinated or immune can lower the reproduction number below 1, which means the disease is disappearing. 90% of unprotected people who come in contact with somebody who has measles, even just breathing the same air, will become infected. To control a super contagious virus like that, the vaccination rate has to be 95% or above. Now, right now, the US is lagging behind, and measles is making a comeback. The Guardian put together a simulation of just how this so-called herd immunity works. When enough of a population is vaccinated, even if it's not 100%, the herd can protect the unprotected. With vaccine refusal on the rise, our herd immunity is breaking down. Preventable diseases like measles and whooping cough have become our scurvy. Most of us don't know anyone with polio, and measles, it's not that bad, right? Well, yes, it is that bad. Before the age of vaccines, millions of people were killed by diseases that today are just bad memories. Vaccines have let us develop a sort of generational amnesia. Today we expect our children to grow up healthy, and we're lucky that we don't appreciate just how dangerous these diseases are. Like science writer Seth Mnookin says, vaccines are victims of their own success. Because of stories like Andrew Wakefield's discredited study wrongly linking vaccines and autism, and the news media's obsession with pictures of crying, terrified children being poked with needles, people are nervous about vaccines. This anxiety isn't new, though. When Edward Jenner in 1798 saw that milkmaids didn't catch smallpox, well, he realized that because they'd been exposed to the similar cowpox disease, they were immune. And based on this, he developed an early smallpox vaccine by inoculating humans with the cow virus. In fact, the word vaccine itself has bovine origins. Still, as far back as 1802, critics were claiming that the smallpox inoculation would turn you into a cow. Vaccines don't come without risk. Nothing does. But on average, fewer than 1 in a million people will experience a dangerous reaction to common vaccines. Car accidents, playing outside, even walking will injure more children. Vaccines are asking us to do something altruistic, to make a choice to protect not only ourselves and our children, but also those around us. Author Eula Biss says that vaccines are one of the most empathetic things that we can do. A system that's based on people voluntarily using their bodies to protect other vulnerable people. And that's something I hope we don't forget. Now, I'm a doctor, but I'm not that kind of doctor. It's natural to have questions about vaccines, and you should have a conversation with your medical professional. They want the best for you and yours. I will give you one prescription though, and that's to subscribe so you can get a full dose of science every week. And if you want to read some amazing books about vaccines, check out Seth Mnookin's The Panic Virus and On Immunity by Eula Biss. Links in the description. Stay curious. Today we know that citrus fruits cure scurvy because they contain high levels of
Okay, thank
vitamins.
you, Wendy.
Sorry, there we go.
Okay, thank you. So if anyone has any questions about that video, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you have been hearing any questions from parents that you work with or colleagues, feel free to put those in the chat box also. Let's go to the next slide, and Wendy, you're going to talk about COVID-19 vaccines.
So the safety of COVID-19 vaccine is a top priority. So full safety trials were done on each vaccine, and ongoing monitoring continues. As Laura mentioned earlier, it's a continuous thing, not just for COVID-19 vaccines, for all vaccines. We're continually looking at how to make them better. Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine is recommended for children 5 and up, and the safety trials are still ongoing for kids down to age 2. Let me see. COVID-19 vaccine for kids. Your child might need other vaccines at the same time that they go in and get their COVID-19 vaccine. So that's a perfect time to catch up. You can definitely ask your healthcare provider to check and make sure that your child is up to date. Vaccinated kids protect other kids in their classroom, their friends, and their family. And another benefit of vaccinating kids is that they will no longer have to quarantine after they have been exposed to COVID-19 at school. So you won't have to figure out, okay, what do I do with my work schedule? How do I make this work? Now my kid is at home, and even if they're not sick, they're kind of miserable because they're just stuck at home. So having that COVID-19 vaccine will allow them to continue to be part of school, continue to be part of the activities that they love, to continue to see their friends. My daughter was vaccinated with the first one a few weeks ago. She's in first grade. She is a notorious vaccine. She freaks out. It takes a few people to get her, it's very sad, but restrained to get her. The flu shot was a miserable experience for everyone. She's starting to get, though, that she does it to help protect her baby brother and her little sister and everybody in the community. So I was reminding her yesterday, she got the first COVID-19 vaccine, and she was really nervous. She goes, "Mom, I'm scared, but I'm brave. I can do it." And I said, "I know you can." She was really, really sweet. Last night I said, "Oh, we have to go get your second vaccine on Saturday," expecting her to be like a little fearful, a little hesitant. She was like, "I know, Mom." So I was like, "Okay, all right, you got it, man."
That's so cute.
Yeah, I don't have to convince her anymore. She knows how important it is. So I'm very proud of her, and I'm very happy that we finally have the opportunity to get the kids that are in school vaccinated. So now I'm not as nervous when she comes home from school and plays with her little brother and sister. So that is something that is widely available. I'm sure we talk about where to get the vaccine. I know we have a ton of resources to help families get to the places that are providing vaccines for kids. So this COVID-19 vaccine just really allows our kids to live a life that they were living before COVID was a thing. Going to birthday parties, having friends over, playing sports, doing all of the things that they love, hoping library programs come back. That's something that my 3-year-old has not, my 6-year-old got to do it all the time. Grandma used to take her, and they had so much fun, and she met her earliest friends there. And my 3-year-old has not been able to do that, and I think she's missing out. So, this is really just going to give us the opportunity to get back to normal and back to a healthy social life that kids really just thrive on.
So earlier in the pandemic, my 5th grader, he was exposed to COVID in his classroom, and the whole classroom had to quarantine for 10 days. He was not sick. He did not get any symptoms. He was bouncing off the walls at home and so crazy. And I was saying, like, he doesn't have any symptoms. Can he come back? Like, what's going on? And the nurse was like, no, he can't. Fast forward to this year, my 8th grader, he was, I have received many exposures to COVID from school, email exposures, but I did get a nurse call, and she said, the child sitting next to your son has tested positive. Your son has been exposed. I see here he is vaccinated. He does not need to quarantine, just monitor him. And thankfully he did not develop COVID from that exposure. So I feel so grateful that my kids have been able to get their COVID vaccines.
And again, too, we talk about our little ones at home, Laura, and it just that's what we're scared about, is them coming home and exposing the babies. And now that he's vaccinated and he's protected, he can help protect the baby, which I think is a really it's a concept that my 6-year-old is now starting to understand, and I think it's really interesting to watch that kind of click in her brain. Whereas of course, even a year ago, that was harder for her to understand, but she gets it and she wants to do her part. She wants to do it, which I think is really sweet. What we've seen too is that younger children may experience fewer side effects from the vaccine than adolescents or young adults. And children who have had COVID vaccine, who have had COVID earlier may have fewer side effects than those without evidence of ever being infected before. And the expected side effects are pain, swelling, arrhythmia at the injection site, fever, fatigue, headache, chills. But again, my daughter, I kept telling her, move your arm, because after I got the vaccine, my biggest side effect was a painful injection site. So it was just, my arm was sore, which I think is expected with really any vaccine. So I told her, I go, make sure you're moving your arm. And we had some activities planned that day. We get home and she goes, Mom, I've been having so much fun, I forgot to move my arm. And I said, I think you were moving your arm while you were having fun, so I think you'll be fine. But she was totally fine. It was really nothing. And yeah, so I'm hoping that she has that same sort of reaction on Saturday when she gets her second shot. And again, we do want to remind you that they can get the COVID-19 vaccine at the same time as other childhood vaccines, and flu as well. So this is a very good time to make sure that the children are getting the flu shot, especially if they're going in for that COVID vaccine. We do talk about how the COVID infection in children have been really mild, but it's really important to remember that even though it might be mild and it's not, you don't really hear about it as much, there have been 6.8 million cases in children. over 25,000 hospitalizations, over 5,500 miss C cases, and from that 48 deaths, and almost 1,000 deaths in children since the start of the pandemic. So that's not nothing. That's really important that those 996 deaths were children. They were people who were in the community. They had friends, they had families. It's important that you can't just say, oh, only this small percentage of people. If it can be prevented, don't you want to prevent it? Because that's a life that is, definitely has an impact on the families in the community.
Okay, so here's we're going to go through a few questions you may have heard about getting the COVID-19 vaccine specifically. And Janae, thank you so much for chatting this into the chat box, this exact question. So I'm going to talk about it, and hopefully this will answer your question. Is it safe for my child to get the COVID-19 vaccine given the stories about myocarditis? So you may have heard this before, it's been in the news. Is that really safe? And the short answer is yes, it is safe. And here's why. The risk of myocarditis or pericarditis after getting the COVID-19 vaccine is lower than the risk of getting myocarditis from COVID itself. So there's a much smaller risk of getting myocarditis from the vaccine than getting myocarditis from COVID itself, the disease or the virus. Myocarditis and or pericarditis have occurred rarely in some people following COVID vaccines. Typically, you'll see it within the first few days. That's about 2.5 cases per 1 million people. The observed risk is highest in males 12 to 29 years of age. So I have my 2 older sons are 13 and 14. This was happening. We started hearing about this before they got their COVID vaccine. I talked to my doctor and she said, yes, it's still better for them to get the vaccine. You can monitor them after. And because I was a little concerned, like, is this safe? It's a newer vaccine. And I knew to ask my doctor, and she talked me through it. And I did get my kids vaccinated. They've been vaccinated for a few months. They did not have any issues with myocarditis. So I was happy that I was able to make that, have that conversation and make that choice. You may know that the Pfizer vaccine is given to kids under the age of 12. It's a smaller dose. It's 1/3 the dose of those 12 and older. So there should be less reaction to that. And aside from COVID vaccines, myocarditis is somewhat common, particularly as a result of viral infections. So typically we see that about 100 to 200 cases per 1 million people per year. So compared to developing that from the COVID vaccine was 2.5 cases per 1 million. So yes. Now, the question from Janae, if the child has a heart condition, should they receive it? And that is a question for the doctor. And I had a friend who has a history of pericarditis. He got the vaccine and he definitely did get myocarditis from getting the vaccine. And he was monitored by his doctor and they had to give him some medication for the myocarditis. And now he's working with his doctor to say, okay, when can I get the second vaccine? And typically they do that in a more like a longer monitoring area. They will monitor you a lot longer than just the 15 minutes after the vaccine. So yes, it's still recommended that you get that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, here's another one that you may have heard. Is it safe to get the vaccine while pregnant or breastfeeding? And will it, sorry, that's the next slide. So can COVID-19 vaccine affect puberty and or fertility in my child? I have heard this concern. Working with vaccines, we hear all kinds of things. So no, the rumors related to COVID-19 vaccines affecting puberty or fertility are unfounded. In fact, in the studies where they were testing the vaccine, they encouraged people not to get pregnant if they had gotten the vaccine during the study because they wanted to monitor that. And several people did get pregnant during that vaccine trial. So it did not cause any problems with fertility. The mRNA vaccines are processed near the injection site, and activated immune system cells travel through the lymph system to nearby lymph nodes. So they're not affecting hormone levels or traveling through the body to other parts of the body. And there is no biological reason to expect that reproductive health or anything would be negatively affected by COVID-19 vaccination now or in years to come. So thank you so much for these questions. These are really great. Next slide. Is it safe to get the vaccine while pregnant or breastfeeding? COVID-19 vaccines are recommended for all people 5 and older, including people who are pregnant, breastfeeding, trying to get pregnant now, or may become pregnant in the future. As Wendy mentioned before, pregnant people are more likely to get severely ill when they contract COVID-19 compared to non-pregnant people. When I was pregnant, I delivered in January. The numbers that were happening at that time were a pregnant person was 17 times more likely to be hospitalized if they contracted COVID. That was a pretty scary thing, and I did not have access to the vaccine. Thankfully, I did not contract COVID while pregnant and made it through, but overwhelmingly, it is safe and effective to get the vaccine while pregnant or breastfeeding and can protect you a lot more. If you are pregnant or have questions about the COVID vaccine during pregnancy, we do have this number and link. There's a live chat on mother to baby. So we will have that on our website with all the other links today. Next slide. So most of you attending today work with parents of young children or patients that have young children. It's really important that you yourself get the COVID-19 vaccine and protect the people around you, including all of your patients and parents. It is widely available now. We want you to stay healthy and be able to continue to serve Arizona's families. If you need a location, I'm going to ask Jasmine to put into the chat box the link to our COVID-19 vaccine finder. It's a really cool resource where you type in your address and it shows you all the locations nearby that you can find a COVID vaccine. And if you would like a COVID-19 vaccine button, this orange one on the screen, we have those free on our website also. Next slide. Excuse me. And just a reminder, once you are fully vaccinated against COVID-19, you can safely participate in many activities. This resource is great because it shows what activities are safest based on your immunization level. This is available on our website also. Next slide. Okay, Denise, do we have any questions that have not already been answered in the chat? We have time to go over those. Okay, yes, we'll get to that. Vaccine ingredients. Okay. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. We would love to go over them today. let's think about we have a few different scenarios that you may encounter or you may hear about, and we want to make sure that you have the tools needed to answer the questions that you're getting. Excuse me. So as we go through these, just think about how you would talk to parents or encourage them to vaccinate. Because remember, you're the professional and they respect your opinion. So we want to make sure that you have the resources that you need. Next slide.
So our first conversation that we want to bring up is about the journey of vaccines. So a couple you're friends with tells you that they worry newer vaccines are not safe. They worry that the pharmaceutical companies make vaccines without testing them before they are given to kids and adults. I think this is a very common question that we hear right now because people think that the COVID vaccine was rushed. But what resources do you have available to help them with their concerns? So think about how you would approach that. These are just some bullet points that you can have as a way to respond to that. Before a new vaccine is ever given to people, extensive lab testing is done, and that can take several years. Once testing in people begins, it can take several more years before clinical studies are complete and the vaccine is licensed. The FDA sets rules for 3 phases of clinical trials to ensure the safety of volunteers, and researchers test vaccines with adults first. The FDA and CDC closely monitor vaccine safety after the public begins using the vaccine. And the purpose is to monitor, to watch for adverse events, which are side effects. Monitoring a vaccine after it is licensed helps ensure that possible risks associated with the vaccine are identified. We're going to watch this quick video on the journey of vaccines.
The journey of your child's vaccine. A vaccine must be safe and effective. How a new vaccine is developed, approved, and manufactured. Vaccines begin the journey in the laboratory, where scientists work to figure out how best to protect against dangerous germs. Before a new vaccine is made available to the public, researchers usually must do years of lab tests on the vaccine. If lab results look promising and the vaccine appears to be both safe and effective, volunteers will be enrolled to get the vaccines in a series of carefully monitored clinical trials. The manufacturer usually conducts 3 phases of clinical trials. Each phase is designed to gather more information about the vaccine's safety and how well it works. These trials can take years to complete. During phase 1, about 20 to 100 healthy adults get the vaccine. Researchers track how well the vaccine works, whether it's safe, what is the correct dose for disease protection, and what possible serious side effects may occur. In phase 2, hundreds of volunteers participate. This is when experts learn more about the possible short-term side effects and how the volunteers' immune systems are responding. Phase 3 trials are the most informative, with results from hundreds or even thousands of volunteers. In these trials, vaccinated volunteers are compared with volunteers who receive another vaccine or no vaccine. These results give researchers a better idea of how well the vaccine works and if there are possible side effects they should expect. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, along with the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, review all of the data the researchers have gathered throughout the trials and decide whether or not to license the vaccine. Once licensed, vaccines are made in batches called lots. Manufacturers test the lots to make sure the vaccines are safe, pure, and potent. The FDA reviews the safety and quality of each lot before it is released. The FDA inspects manufacturing facilities on a regular basis to ensure quality and safety. How a vaccine is added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. Once the FDA licenses a vaccine, CDC brings together the members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, to review all of the research available on the licensed vaccine. The members of the ACIP include world-renowned vaccine and disease experts from groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians, CDC, and other government agencies. These experts look at how well the vaccine works and whether it's safe when given to different age groups. They also weigh the seriousness of the disease the vaccine prevents and figure out how many children would get sick if they did not get vaccinated. The experts then decide if they should recommend that vaccine be added to the U.S. recommended immunization schedule. If the CDC approves the experts' recommendations, the vaccine officially becomes part of the schedule, and soon it will be available at your healthcare provider's office. How a vaccine's safety continues to be monitored. Once children start getting the vaccine, the FDA and CDC continue to watch for possible side effects. Reactions that happen after a vaccination get reported to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, or VAERS. Anyone can submit a report to VAERS, including parents, caregivers, patients, doctors, and nurses. However, the reactions that are reported may or may not be caused by the vaccines. They may require further investigation. Researchers at FDA and CDC analyze the VAERS reports and look for any trends that may be happening. FDA and CDC also use other vaccine safety systems. The Vaccine Safety Data Link, or VSD, and the Post-Licensure Rapid Immunization Safety Monitoring System, or PRISM, actively monitor new vaccines to obtain additional information about their safety. VSD has access to healthcare information for over 24 million people. PRISM can analyze healthcare information from over 190 million people. CDC also uses the Clinical Immunization Safety Assessment Project, or CISA, to study vaccine safety. CISA is a collaboration between CDC and 7 medical research centers. CISA vaccine safety experts conduct individual case reviews and clinical research studies about vaccine safety. Recommendations for using the vaccine may change if the vaccine's risks are found to be greater than its benefits. The end goal is always the same: to safely and effectively protect children, families, and communities against potentially serious diseases. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/vaccines or cdc.gov/vaccine-safety or fda.gov/cber.
So I think that's just a really great video. It's kind of, it just shows the complexities that go into the pathway of development to getting that vaccine in your arm. So there's kind of a lot of information in that, and if you need to go back and rewatch it, it's definitely a good idea. Let me see. I think one of the questions that we get is, you know, if this is how long it takes a vaccine to be developed, how was the COVID-19 vaccine created so quickly? And that is really, it's a totally different case than all of these other vaccines, in the fact that everybody was working together to solve this problem. So the technology was already there. The type of vaccine that it is was already started to be created. So they didn't start from scratch, but then everybody kind of came to the table and said, how do we do this quickly and effectively and make sure that we are protecting the population? So everybody worked together. There was no competition. There was also a lot of disease circulating, so it was easier to get people to test the vaccine to see how effective it was at preventing that transmission. So there's a lot more information on that we can definitely provide for you if this is a question that you are hearing a lot, and this is a resource that you would like to help address that question.
Thank you. So we got a question earlier about vaccine ingredients and if they are safe. So I'm going to ask you to stop sharing, and I have a video about that also and some resources.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so you may be wondering, you may have heard about thimerosal, which is in the influenza vaccine. And some people are worried that it can cause mercury poisoning in either children or affect the unborn child of someone who's pregnant. So I'm just going to explain to you why thimerosal contained in vaccines is not harmful. It's not actually the same type of mercury as you may be thinking mercury is. So mercury is a naturally occurring element found in the Earth's crust, air, and soil. And thimerosal contains ethyl mercury. Now, I am not a scientist or a doctor, but we do have Dr. Paul Offit, who is very good at explaining why this is safe and why it's needed. So let's watch this video of him telling us about it.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center here at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I think one of the concerns parents have is about a potential additive to vaccines, the preservative mercury. Is mercury in vaccines? And the answer to that question is that mercury is in some multi-dose preparations of the influenza vaccine. The form of mercury is called ethyl mercury, and the name of that product is called thimerosal. Now, one could reasonably be concerned about this, knowing that mercury, certainly at high concentrations, can be toxic to the brain and the so-called the central nervous system. But in order to understand, I think, why it is that the mercury that was contained or is contained in some multi-dose preparations of the flu vaccine isn't harmful, I think we need to step back and try and understand mercury in our environment. Mercury is in the Earth's crust. It has been ever since the formation of the Earth. It's in an inorganic form through things like volcanoes and rock erosions. That inorganic mercury comes to the surface of the Earth, where it in soil or on the surface of the seas, it is taken up by bacteria and methylated. So it goes from inorganic mercury to methyl mercury. That methyl mercury is now organic mercury. It has the capacity to cross cell membranes and do harm. Now, the quantity of methyl mercury that's in the environment is actually far greater than one would ever be exposed to in the mercury that's in vaccines, which actually isn't methyl mercury. It's ethyl mercury, and it's a larger molecule, and as a consequence, is excreted from the body 10 times more quickly than is methyl mercury. So whereas methyl mercury accumulates to a far greater extent in the body than ethyl mercury, I think parents should be reassured by that. But I think more reassuring is the fact that just to know that because we all are exposed to methyl mercury all the time, and it's in anything that's made from water, including breast milk and including infant formula, that babies are exposed to far more methyl mercury in what they drink as young infants, either in formula or in breast milk, than they would ever get from the mercury in vaccines. And remember, the vaccines or influenza vaccine isn't given to less than 6-month-old children. So again, there's no avoiding mercury, and as is true, there's no avoiding many heavy metals in the environment. We all have cadmium, thallium, beryllium, even arsenic in our body, but it's at quantities far below that would ever do harm. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Okay, so just wanted to reinforce that all vaccines are tested. They go through strenuous safety trials to make sure that they are safe to take. And hopefully that answers your question about ingredients in vaccines. So Wendy, we can go back to you. If there's any other questions, oh, I see the request to put that link in the chat. All of the links from today, including that video, and there's also a fact sheet that goes along with it, are available on our website. And we will put the link in at the end if it hasn't been already. And you can access that anytime. So So let's get forward to Wendy. Will you talk about autism? That's always
Sure.
something that we hear a lot. Sometimes parents are concerned if their child gets a vaccine, will they get autism? So why don't you kind of talk us through it and let us hear.
Okay, so this is kind of how the conversation is framed. A mom of a 13-month-old toddler is sharing in her mom's group that her baby is not the same as she was before her MMR shot. She's worried that the shot caused harm and wants to warn others about vaccines and autism. So here are some resources that we have available to help with that. Autism usually becomes apparent around the same age that MMR is given. So babies are starting to be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more independent. So they're starting to become that. They're developmentally around the same time that they get that MMR vaccine. So they get that MMR vaccine at 12 months. But what we know correlation does not equal causation. So just because it happens at the same time doesn't mean that that is what caused it. There's lots of research being done on autism, and we know that it probably has multiple components, including genetics, which are not affected by vaccines. And again, they're given it at the time when babies are changing quickly. So every day, if you've had a baby, you know every day is a new day. They're learning, they're growing, their personality is changing basically day to day. So it feels like, your toddler is unrecognizable from one day to the next. So it just happens to be around the same time that you notice that the MMR is given, that you notice that your baby is changing and all of these developmental things are happening. We do have a video for this as well that we want to show. So let's see. And here we go.
Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I think probably one of the most common concerns parents have about vaccines is, do they cause autism? Certainly very easy to find that contention on the internet and in chat rooms, so it can be scary. And I think from the parent standpoint, they argue this: look, my child was fine, they got a vaccine, now they've developed signs and symptoms of autism. Could the vaccine have done it? Well, the good news is that's an answerable question. And it's really been in three different areas that this issue has been raised. One is the concern that the combination of measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR vaccine caused autism. The second is the notion that there was an ethyl mercury containing preservative that was in a number of vaccines. Now it's only in some multi-dose vials of influenza vaccine called thimerosal. And then the third sort of concern is that children are just getting too many vaccines too soon, that that's somehow weakening or overwhelming or perturbing their immune system. Well, these are studyable questions. You can answer this question. So, for example, in the case of measles, mumps, and rubella, there now have been 18 studies done in 7 different countries on 3 different continents involving hundreds of thousands of children who either did or didn't get the MMR vaccine, making sure that those two groups are otherwise similar with regard to their healthcare seeking behavior, their socioeconomic background, their medical background. And again and again and again, those studies all found the same thing, that the MMR vaccine did not cause autism, and that's been true also for these other 2 concerns. The good news is I think most parents get this. I think most parents believe these studies because a recent study by the Autism Science Foundation found that about 85% of parents of children with autism now are comfortable that vaccines weren't the cause. Thank you.
Dr. Offit has a ton of these videos. He's really good at addressing a lot of the concerns that he's been doing vaccine research for a very long time. And I know that we're going to share some of those videos with you, but I'm sure you can find more to any question that you have.
If there's any other questions about a specific subject, please put them in the chat. We'd love to talk about it. Okay, so this next scenario is about a measles party. And you may have heard of people having like a chicken pox party, and they get a bunch of kids together. And so all the kids play together and they get a chance to get the disease and then boost their immune system. So a family you're working with is asking if this is a good idea. Now, fast forward to today, and I have heard of people having COVID parties. Get all the kids together, get together with your family. Someone has COVID, let's all go visit them, and we can all get COVID and get the natural immunity. Now, here's why this is not a good idea. And please, please do not recommend, please tell people, do not do this. We know that there have been COVID parties, and the whole party ends up in the hospital on respirators. There was a news article about that last week. And it's really sad because obviously we want to keep people healthy and safe. So let's go to the next slide. Infection usually does cause better immunity than vaccination, but infection causes a lot of other things too, besides immunity. So the price paid for natural disease can include paralysis, brain damage, permanent brain damage, liver cirrhosis or cancer, deafness, blindness, pneumonia, and even death. So those are not great things, and we do not want to expose our kids to those things. So please do not recommend anyone do any sort of measles, chickenpox, COVID party, anything like that. Let's go to the next slide. And go ahead and play this video. Is natural infection better than vaccination? This is something I have heard a lot, and I'm sure most of you have also. Is this video not on here?
This must be the one that I had seen.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's in this link though. There we go.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name's Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. One question parents reasonably ask is, isn't natural infection better than immunization? Well, I mean, I'm a man in my 60s. I was a child in the 1950s. I had measles. When I had measles, I developed an antibody response that is probably threefold greater than what children will get if they get a vaccine. But what I didn't have to suffer by being naturally infected was I didn't get pneumonia, which could have caused me to be hospitalized. I didn't get encephalitis or infection of the brain, and I didn't die. I mean, every year in the 1950s, everyone got measles by the time they were 9 years of age. That meant that 3 to 4 million people every year would get measles. About 48,000 would be hospitalized with pneumonia or encephalitis, and 500 would die. Fortunately, I wasn't one of those people, but I could have been. So the better question isn't, is natural infection better than immunization? The better question is immunization good enough? Can immunization induce an immune response that's good enough to prevent and arguably eliminate these diseases? Well, we have the answer for measles. When we had a second dose measles vaccine recommendation in 1991, that meant that all children in this country were recommended to receive a measles vaccine when they were 12 to 15 months of age, and again at 4 to 6 years of age. With that, we eliminated measles from the United States, eliminated it by the year 2000. The only reason that it's come back recently is that a critical number of parents have chosen not to vaccinate their children. So I think the good news about the measles vaccine is it induces an immune response that's good enough to have eliminated that virus from this country without asking children or having children risk the severe and occasionally fatal effects of a natural measles infection. Thank you.
So hopefully that answers your questions about that. The next few slides are just about finding reliable resources. So know where you can go to find reliable sources. If you feel like putting in the chat where you usually find good vaccine resources, feel free to do that. We have on our website several different things, but you need to make sure that you are finding news information from reliable sources, and it's not just some myth kind of floating around. This handout, which is available on our website, it lists all kinds of different apps, books, websites that you can use that are trusted sources. So that is available on our website. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. Many of our videos today came from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and Denise put that in the chat. Thanks for doing that, Denise. So that's a great place to go. And Dr. Offit explains things in a very clear way that your parents or patients could find helpful. So those are great resources to use. Also, we recommend the CDC for current vaccine information. Let's go to the next slide. And we have this handout here with common questions that you may hear. This is available on our website, whyimmunize.org. Talking points about how to have tough vaccine conversations, all kinds of different things. Next slide. Tappy has dozens of different flyers for every sort of vaccination or stage of life that you are in, what you can do to protect from the flu, what you can do to protect your whole family, including your pets. We have a family pet flyer. When your child goes off to college, what vaccines they need. All of these are free and available on our website as a download, or you can order them printed and we'll ship them to you. Next slide. Vaccines for Children is such a wonderful program. If you do not have health insurance or your health insurance does not cover vaccination, Vaccines for Children is a program that will let you vaccinate for free. So they have different places where you can find a vaccine for children provider, and it's free to go and do that. So the cost should never be a reason why someone cannot get vaccinated. Next slide. Thank you so much. Thank you, Wendy, for joining me today. Thank you to KHEC for presenting the program, and Tappy also. Make sure that you guys get vaccinated, cover your cough, wash your hands, stay home when you're sick. We love to give prizes, and we have two different evaluations. So one is evaluating the program as a whole. We would love your feedback because it really helps improve our programs in the future. So feel free to fill that out, and we are giving away some prizes for the evaluation. And then the next slide. If you are joining us today as a social worker, certified health education specialist, or registered nurse, we do have CEUs available. So this website or this Survey Monkey link will get you your CEUs for today. You can also use this if you need a certificate of participation for today. So if your employment workplace requires that, we would love to give you a certificate of participation, even if you aren't in any of these other professions. So thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We do have 2 minutes left. If you have any additional questions, I would highly recommend that if you have your COVID vaccine and flu shot this year, contact us to get one of those flu shot buttons. It's a great way to let your patients and parents know that you're vaccinated. They can be safe talking to you, and you can give them reliable information. So thank you so much. Just going to look through the chat, make sure we're not missing any questions. Tappy does offer this training quarterly. So if any of your coworkers or other people that you work with would like to attend, please let me know. And we would love to have them next time, which would be in about March. So we get the certification. Let's post that link again. I think Jasmine has that link. If you are a registered nurse, certified health education specialist, or social worker, the CEs are available for that. Oh, this is a great question. The health departments of some Latin American countries have health crusades and vaccine promoters where nurses, health field students, and volunteers go from home to home and vaccinate kids who are missing shots. Has ADHS ever thought of implementing that type of program? Have you ever heard anything about that, Wendy?
No, I do know that a lot of times, so the actual vaccination is done by the counties. You know, that's something that is fulfilled by the county health departments. And I know, as somebody who went to a very rural school when I was growing up, we had the county come out to our school and do vaccination clinics that way, so that the kids out there who maybe couldn't, didn't have access to go into town, which was 45, an hour and 15 minutes from where we were to any, big city. They would have the nurses come out and do that there. So I know that still continues. So, it's similar-ish, definitely not the same as going door to door. But I love that idea. I'm not sure of the logistics.
Yeah, and I think you're right that it is through the county. I do know that some counties have community health workers and promotorists, and they do go door to door, and they may or may not have vaccine on them available, but they do have the information needed to tell you where you can get your vaccine. And they do several clinics in schools and community centers and all of that. So our TAPI vaccine finder can help you figure out where the closest place to get a vaccine is. I know Jasmine posted that earlier. It's a really great resource, and it covers all of Arizona. So not just Maricopa County or Pima County, it's all across Arizona. So it's a great resource to use for parents or friends, family, that live across the state. Okay, it looks like we are out of time for today. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something, fill out those evaluations, and there will be prize drawing for that too. And I will be mailing out those prizes to the people who won today. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Malika, we are good to stop the recording now too. Thank you.